Welcome to Dieu Han RV. Thank you for joining us in this quiet corner of YouTube, where stories are not just told, they're felt. If you're someone who believes in second chances, silent strength, and the quiet bravery of ordinary lives, you're in the right place. She ran, not to escape life, but to stay alive. Yen was hunted by those who saw her as weak, as disposable. But they were wrong. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She ran through fear, through darkness, through everything trying to break her. This video is a preview of the next episode, an emotional dive into Yen's desperate escape. Alone, exhausted, fighting off those who tried to take her. Her journey is one of survival and silent resistance. But will it be enough? If this story touches something inside you, please hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need it. Every click, every comment, keeps this journey alive and helps voices like Dieu Han and Yen be heard. Thank you. The memory of his grip still haunted her skin, but now she was free, if only for a moment. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the storm of emotions surging inside her. She clenched her fists, forcing herself not to cry. There would be time for tears later. Right now, she needed strength. Yen's thoughts raced faster than her footsteps. What if he finds me again? What if there's nowhere left to run? But in the silence of the path ahead, she also heard something else. Her own heartbeat. Steady. Alive. And broken. The world might be dangerous, but she was not helpless. She was a woman who had faced the worst and was still standing. There was power in that. Quiet, defiant power, and she would hold on to it with every breath. She kept walking, each step heavy with fear, but also fierce with defiance. There was no one to call, no one to lean on, and yet, somewhere in the thick of uncertainty, she still chose to run, not just from danger, but toward a life she believed she still deserved. Tears brimmed. But she didn't stop, because if she did, they might find her, and she promised herself they wouldn't win. Not this time. Yen didn't plan on changing clothes that day, but life had its way of deciding things for her. A kind woman noticed her worn-out outfit and quietly handed over a neatly folded set of clothes. Yen hesitated only a moment. Then she changed, not just her shirt and pants, but something deeper. She felt a little less like a hunted girl, and a bit more like someone who still had choices left. That small shift gave her strength to keep walking. The new clothes weren't fancy, but they were clean and unrecognizable. Exactly what Yen needed. She tied her hair back, lowered her head, and stepped into the crowd. Her heart still raced, but her body blended in better now. Every step away from her past felt like a new chance. Maybe not freedom, not yet, but survival. For now, that was enough. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she had to keep going. They say good people attract kindness, and in that moment, Yen started to believe it. She didn't know the woman's name, but her gesture spoke louder than words. One act of kindness, in a world that felt like it was closing in, reminded Yen that not everyone was out to hurt her. Sometimes, someone shows up not to ask questions, but simply to help. That silent understanding was the greatest comfort Yen had felt in days. She sat silently, unsure what to say. But the woman opposite her didn't need words to understand. After just a few glances, she stood up, disappeared briefly, and returned with a cool bottle of water and a conical hat. No lectures. No judgment. Just kindness in its quietest form. Yen was taken aback. In a world where she had learned to expect so little, this small gesture felt overwhelming. She bowed slightly, her throat tight. Gratitude was too big for words. She sat silently, unsure what to say. But the woman opposite her didn't need words to understand. After just a few glances, she stood up, disappeared briefly, and returned with a cool bottle of water and a conical hat. No lectures. No judgment. Just kindness in its quietest form. Yen was taken aback. In a world where she had learned to expect so little, this small gesture felt overwhelming. She bowed slightly, her throat tight. Gratitude was too big for words. Yen looked up, her lips parting to say thank you, but the words stayed stuck. How do you thank someone for giving you back a little of your own worth? She swallowed the lump in her throat and offered a simple nod. Sometimes, that's all you can do. And for now, it was enough. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel completely alone. The older woman looked into Yen's eyes and said slowly, "My daughter, she's about your age, married young." But the man she trusted broke her down, little by little, until one day, she came home with bruises and a silence too heavy to carry. We cried together that night. Not because of what had happened, but because we both knew she deserved better. The older woman leaned forward, her voice steady. People always say girls should endure, should be quiet, should stay. But when her daughter came crying one night, she didn't say those things. She said, "No child of mine has to stay where she's not respected. No woman has to lose herself to be called loyal." It took time, but her daughter left. The older woman returned with a small piece of cake, gently placing it in Yen's hand. She didn't say much, just looked at Yen with eyes that had seen too much and hoped even more. Sometimes, care didn't need many words. Just a simple gesture could make someone feel human again. Yen bit into the cake slowly, her throat tight with gratitude. The memory of his grip still haunted her skin, but now she was free, if only for a moment. Her hands trembled, not from cold, but from the storm of emotions surging inside her. She clenched her fists, forcing herself not to cry. There would be time for tears later. Right now, she needed strength. "Pick carefully," she added, almost like a whisper to herself. "The men you choose will shape your whole life. A choice, just one, can either anchor or break you." Yen looked down at her hands, unsure what to say. But in her heart, something quietly nodded in agreement. The old woman gently reached for a conical hat, her hands trembling slightly with age. She had said enough. Yen sat quietly, not daring to speak, her heart swelling with something she couldn't name. There was no grand farewell, no dramatic gesture, only this quiet moment. A gift of shade, from one woman to another. And in that silence, Yen understood. Sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes, it's a simple act, given with care, without asking for anything in return. Yen stood up slowly, hat in hand, bowing slightly to the woman before her. The words caught in her throat, but her eyes said everything. She didn't just feel grateful, she felt seen. Truly seen. The woman nodded, as if she understood without needing to ask. Yen turned to leave, heart full, the weight on her shoulders just a little lighter. Her feet still sore, her journey still uncertain, but her spirit, somehow, felt less alone. She walked away slowly, the conical hat resting lightly on her head, but her heart felt heavy. Every step forward only reminded her of the uncertainty behind her. The world outside looked normal, peaceful even, but her fears clung tightly like shadows under the sun. What if they found her again? What if this short moment of safety was just borrowed time? She kept walking, but her mind was a storm of doubts she couldn't silence. She walked quickly, but her heart was slow to follow. Every footstep echoed with fear. Every glance over her shoulder brought back the nightmare. The street was empty, but she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The kind woman's words still echoed in her mind. Choose someone who truly values you. But what if the world didn't value her at all? She clutched the conical hat tighter, as if it could shield her from the past chasing behind. Today, fear returned, and it walked beside her. She stopped, her breath caught in her throat. A figure stood across the road, leaning on a motorbike. Familiar. Too familiar. She pressed her back to the yellow wall, trying to steady her hands. Was it really him? Or just her mind playing tricks? Either way, she couldn't risk it. Not now. Not when she'd come this far. The narrow alley beside her suddenly felt like the only way out. Her chest rose and fell rapidly as she ducked behind a rusted shelter. She didn't dare peek out. Her instincts screamed hide. The heat was stifling, but she didn't move. She could hear footsteps. A phone call. A voice too close. This was the same fear she thought she had escaped, but it had found her again. And this time, she was alone. So she crouched, holding her breath, waiting for danger to pass. Her feet were frozen, but her mind screamed to run. That face. That voice. That nightmare she had hoped would never return was now just meters away. But this time, she wasn't the same girl who once begged for mercy. She was stronger, smarter. Yet fear has a cruel way of whispering doubts even into the bravest hearts. Will she escape before it's too late? What do you think? Will Uyen outrun the shadow that hunts her? Thank you for watching this video until the very end. If Uyen's journey made your heart ache even for a moment, please consider subscribing to Dieu Han RV. Every click, every share, is a silent hand reaching out, telling these women they're not alone. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person who still believes in you. Thank you for being that person today.